It's your boy Luke here for another NFL Showdown video, this time for Monday Night Football between the Giants and the Chiefs, which is going to be a high-scoring affair. On the Giants side of things, we had quite a few injuries throughout the last few weeks, but have a lot of guys coming back. The only major player not returning is going to be Saquon Barkley. And on the Chiefs side of things, a ton of question marks, but this is routinely one of the best offenses in the NFL, and I expect a huge rebound from them tonight. What we'll do in this video is we're going to go over everything you guys need to know for the single game slate, particularly on Draftkings DFS. We're going to talk injury report, we'll talk a game script, as well as our favorite stud options for each team, our favorite value plays, and of course, our favorite selections for the captain slot. Everything you need to know to make some lineups. So without any more delay, let's hop right into it. First off with our injury report for this game tonight. So we'll start on the away side with the Giants. We have Saquon Barkley, who I already talked about, not going to be playing. He's going to be joined by Kenny Golladay, who's already been rolled out. In terms of guys that are questionable, we have a bunch of them, but on the offensive side of the ball, we have major concerns at wide receiver. We have Kadarius Toney questionable, Sterling Shepard also questionable for the contest. Both are expected to suit up though. Toney is a little bit more of a game time decision than Shepard, so we need to keep an eye on Toney at the very least, but should have those two wide receivers back. We have Caden Smith, their tight end, questionable. And on the defensive side of the ball, we have Lorenzo Carter, Nate Ebner, and Carter Coughlin already rolled out. So some injuries on both sides of the ball. I do think that wide receiver situation is the most important of the bunch, but we'll at least have two of their top three wide receivers back. And now for the Chiefs, not quite as big a deal in terms of injuries. We have Mike Remmers, their tackle is questionable. Tre'Davious Ward, their cornerback, somebody who starts for them in the slot, questionable. And in terms of guys that are out, Kalen Sanders and Anthony Hitchens. And while Hitchens can be a little bit of a big deal on defense, obviously one of the leaders of that defense, they do have plenty of bodies to make up for that. And the defense isn't necessarily their strong suit to begin with. So in terms of the game script, like I mentioned before, this is going to be an absolute shootout. This game has the highest total of any game this week at 52 points. Also a relatively large spread. We have the Chiefs favored by 10.5 points, and I personally don't agree with that. I think this is going to be a much more contested game. Even with the injuries on the Giants side of things, they have a bunch of wide receivers that should be able to get it done, particularly if Toney and Shepard play. I mean, we've seen this Chiefs team let up a ton of passing yards to this point of the year, and Daniel Jones has looked a lot better this year. Not only has he been running the ball like he has in the past, but as a passer has looked much more polished, much more efficient. So I think this game is going to be a one-score game. I don't think it's going to be a two-score game like Vegas has it right now. So as a result, rather than trying to slam in a bunch of Chiefs, I'm also going to have quite a few options from the Giants I like as well. So let's start off with some of our stud options for this slate with all of that in mind. So for the Giants, first off, we have Kadarius Toney at $6,800. If he ends up suiting up tonight, not only do I think he's going to be a little bit underowned because of the injury concerns people are going to have with him, he's one of the higher upside plays on the entire slate. This guy's a deep play threat waiting to happen, extremely athletic, extremely good at high pointing balls as well. And when you're in Showdown, that's exactly what you're looking for. Obviously, the icing on the cake is that ownership, just because people aren't going to be quite as confident going to him. He's been questionable over the last few weeks. He's had some playing time. Obviously, tried to tough it out time and time again. But now that he's had a few more weeks to get his legs under him, I do think this is a spot where you could see him break out. So I have him projected right now for 17.5 points. And on top of all of that, even more icing on the cake here, maybe the sprinkles on top, we'll say, is the matchup. I mean, this Chiefs team is a cupcake of a matchup. You're dealing with some of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL. You're also dealing with a secondary that's relatively banged up. I mean, Tre'Davious Ward also not going to be playing, highly questionable for tonight. So I really like Toney, especially as a number 2 wide receiver. For number 2, we have Sterling Shepard, so the number 1 wide receiver for them tonight. And even though he's going to serve as the team's best wideout, he's not going to be playing on the outside. This guy is a slot specialist, somebody who gets a ton of targets from Daniel Jones, particularly on third down. And without Kenny Golladay in the mix, potentially without Toney and Saquon Barkley, who's already been rolled out, he could get even more usage. So to this point of the year, he has a 30.8% usage rate. I actually have him projected for a 34, maybe even 35% usage rate tonight. So really like him in this situation. At $7,000, you're also getting a really good price tag. You're not having to spend too much for his type of floor. And he's somebody I have in every lineup right now for tonight. I'm 150 maxing. He's somebody I either have in every lineup as a slot, in the flex, or also at the captain slot. So at number 1, though, Daniel Jones, an even better play in my opinion. This defense is going to get lit up by this Giants team, and obviously Daniel Jones is going to have a lot to do with that. On top of his throwing upside, he has plenty of rushing upside as well. We've seen that from time and time again. And while he's been trying to protect himself a little bit more of late, he hasn't been quite as crazy with the rushing stats. I expect them to try and tear up this team. I mean, this is a game that he could potentially go out and win and put themselves right back in the conversation for the NFC East. Obviously, the only team really running away with it going to be the Cowboys, but for a wild card, that is still within their range of outcomes. So I definitely think they're going to be playing hard. You can see he's going to garner some ownership. I mean, Daniel Jones, he's affordable enough there at $10,200 where you're not really sacrificing the rest of your lineup if you play him. And he's somebody I will consider at the captain slot, which we'll get to later on in the video, just because of that rushing upside as well. It kind of differentiates himself there from somebody like Patrick Mahomes, who's going to get a majority of his points by passing the ball. Just gives him a little bit of a higher ceiling, also potentially even higher floor. And now for our Chiefs stud options. First off, we're going to have Travis Kelce at number 3. He's a little bit expensive on the slate at $10,600. So he's not somebody you can really pair up with a Tyreek Hill, especially because I'm prioritizing both these quarterbacks, as you guys can see by my rankings there. But Travis Kelce, he's going to be a little bit lower owned than somebody like a Tyreek Hill. So definitely somebody I'm going to have in my pool. You can see under 30% ownership right there, which for Travis Kelce is relatively low. And a reason for that is the steam behind him. You know, he hasn't had the best season of his entire career or anything like that. Hasn't really had many ceiling games, and those are going to be coming. I mean, this guy is just targeted more than anyone else in the NFL at the position. The only one that really has a word, a say in that conversation would be Darren Waller. And over the last 3-4 weeks, Waller's been a little bit injured, a little bit gimpy, and hasn't seen that type of production. So over that stretch, Kelce has reasserted himself as the number 1 tight end in the NFL, and with that opportunity is going to come production. This guy is prolific after the catch in terms of yardage. This guy is easy. I mean, he makes some of the best tacklers look silly out there. So I really like him there at $10,600. He's a little bit more expensive than I'd like, so I'm not going to have him in every lineup or anything like that. But at 30% ownership, I'm looking at about 50 or 60% exposure and getting some leverage on the field. At number 2, we have Tyreek Hill, though, at $11,000. And pretty much every lineup where I don't have Travis Kelce, I'm almost guaranteed to have Tyreek Hill. And I'm going to have some lineups where I have both of them together. So we're definitely going to have to be fishing for some value here in a second when we get to our value plays. But I like these guys so much. I mean, this is a good matchup against this Giants team. The only real stellar defender on this team is Bradbury, right, at cornerback, which could potentially cause Tyreek Hill some problems, but it's no contest between them in terms of their speed. Tyreek Hill is going to get some separation against just about every cornerback in the NFL. In fact, I can't think of a cornerback that would completely shut down Tyreek Hill. Even Jalen Ramsey is not going to have the speed to keep up from time to time. Is going to let up 1 or 2 big plays. So at 40.2% ownership, definitely a lot higher owned than somebody like a Travis Kelce, so it's a little bit harder to get leverage on him. But Tyreek Hill right now in my pool is 76% exposed. Somebody I'm trying to get as much leverage on him as I can. I'm not able to lock him just because of the price tag. You guys can see he's $11,000. That is quite prohibitive when it comes to building the rest of your lineup. But somebody who has legit 30-point ceiling, even at the flex spot, and obviously going to make our captains list later on. And at number 1 for our stud options for the Chiefs, that is Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously extremely expensive at $12,000. He also hasn't had the best start to the year, so I think he's actually going to come in a little bit lower owned than he should. You can see I have him projected right now at 80%, but you could argue this guy should be 100% owned. We've seen that from time to time. A few days ago, we had a quarterback at 94.5% ownership in one of these primetime slates. And that's really where we should see Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's going to go out there. He's going to get you that production almost guaranteed. So even at $12,000, he is somebody I'm jamming into lineups. He has over a 20-point projection. He's actually the only player on the slate with over a 20-point projection, which really shows that he's separating himself from the field. So I like him there. I don't think I had to tell you to play Patrick Mahomes, so we're not going to go into crazy detail here. I don't love him at the captain slot. I'll go ahead and get that out there right now. He's $18,000 at captain. He's also somebody he doesn't really have 30-point upside. Doesn't have those rushing yards you're looking for at quarterback. Also not somebody, this isn't a type of game where you're going to see 80 points scored or anything like that. So I like Patrick Mahomes at the flex spot, but just don't really like him there at captain. Now for our value plays, I'm going to go ahead and go over some notable picks that didn't crack my top 3 here. Just because we're trying to spend up at as many positions as possible, we're going to have to try and fit in maybe 2, maybe even 3 of these value picks into lineups. So first off, we have Josh Gordon at $200. Obviously, minimum price tag right there. Hasn't really been acclimated to this offense, but would you be surprised if he went out there for a few red zone snaps and ended up scoring a touchdown tonight? I don't think you would be. I mean, this guy is one of the best high pointers of the football in the NFL. And to this point, the only reason he hasn't gotten any snaps is familiarity with the offense. He just doesn't know a lot of the audibles on the run, that kind of thing. So anytime they're in a hurry-up offense, Andy Reid has had to pull him out. He's explicitly said that to this point. So as he's getting more acclimated to this offense, he might even see more playing time. But more importantly, when they're in the red zone, when they're able to take their time, he's definitely going to see the field, and at $200, doesn't have to do much to pay off. Another notable option would be Jerick McKinnon at $1,000. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire still out on the IR. You're dealing with Darrell Henderson taking most of the snaps there, but McKinnon, much better out of the backfield as a wide receiver, also a much better blocker. So if they end up falling way behind to the Giants, which they don't expect, if they end up getting way ahead, though, he could end up coming in as a little bit more of a blocking back. They're not necessarily going to run Darrell Williams into the ground or anything like that. I expect him to at least get 6 or 7 touches regardless of the game script, but a few game scripts out there where McKinnon could get a few extra targets. And then Colin Johnson at $400, the last notable that didn't make our list. Obviously, he's going to be the number 4 wide receiver for the Giants tonight. You have Ross ahead of him. You have Tony ahead of him. Also Sterling Shepard. Pettis as well. So you could argue he might even be the number 5 wide receiver on this team. But going to at least see about 25, maybe 30% of the snap load. That's what he's seen over these past few weeks. And even at that type of snap load, he can end up going out and scoring a touchdown. Again, this guy's only $400. So just like Josh Gordon, potentially somebody to take an absolute flyer pick on. But for our main 3 value plays, at number 3, we have John Ross III at $12,000. Like I mentioned before, he's either going to be playing the number 3 or number 4 wide receiver role for this team. We're not sure how it's really going to stack up between him and Pettis, but you got a good price tag right there, and somebody who has deep play upside on every snap he plays. Something that separates him from Pettis is that speed, is that upside. Not going to see quite as many snaps as our number 2 value pick here, but I really like his upside at the very least. You can see he's single-digit owned, projected for nearly 9 points. So not anybody's going to fly from a median projection standpoint, but his top end upside is 16 to potentially even 20 fantasy points if he catches a long bomb. At number 2, though, we have Dante Pettis, who, again, we just alluded to, a little bit more of a consistent option in terms of a value play, also a lot more expensive. So you're going to have to pay for that type of security. And for me, somebody I will be paying up for in lineups that I'm able to, or I'm not trying to fit in 4 or even 5 of those studs. You can see he's single digit owned as well, just a higher median projection there at 11.4 points. And while he doesn't have quite the same upside as somebody like a John Ross, we've seen Pettis be a preferred target over these last 2-3 weeks. With so many bodies out, Pettis has had some really nice games. Last week had a touchdown, had a bunch of catches as well. And but I'll expect some of that production to at least come a little bit back down to earth. I have a few guys back. You have some guys returning to health that aren't quite as gimpy as they were before. I think in a slate where we have so much top-end value, trying to fit in as many of these value plays as possible is going to be important. But at number 1, we have Mecole Hardman at $4,800. I don't necessarily understand the price here. He's clearly the number 2 wide receiver for this team. So you'd expect him to be $6,500, $7,000, that kind of thing. Perhaps it's because of the prices up top. They felt like you needed a slam dunk value option. That's what Mecole Hardman is on this slate. Obviously, anytime you have a number 2 wide receiver for the Chiefs, he's going to be productive, particularly when it's somebody like Hardman who's getting a lot better. He's improved his route running. His metrics to this point of the year, particularly per snap, have gotten a lot better. And also not garnering the most ownership. You can see just under 16% ownership. We think a slam dunk play like this would be garnering a lot more steam. I think a lot of it has to do with Dante Pettis being just $200 more. A few other options at tight end in that range at all that are gobbling up some ownership. So for me, he's my favorite value play on the slate. Somebody who's projected for 12.7 points, has legit 20-point upside, and a relatively high floor as well. Again, he's running in that number 2 wide receiver role, so he's going to be playing 80, potentially even 90% of the snaps in this game, which I really like a lot at the value option. And now for our captain picks. Number 3, we have Travis Kelce at $15,900. He's coming in single-digit owned at captain, so just like at flex, being a little bit overlooked, which I think is going to be a massive mistake on the slate. He's projected for nearly 30 points at captain. And again, this guy is due for a ceiling performance. He's the best tight end in the NFL. It's not like his targets have completely fallen off the board or anything like that. He just hasn't had that big play. He hasn't had that 2-touchdown game or anything like that we've been so used to seeing. So with Patrick Mahomes, expected to have some type of regression here soon. We're expecting him to put up some better numbers, more used to what we were seeing over the past few years. Travis Kelce is going to be a huge beneficiary when that happens. They're almost directly correlated with each other. So here this week, even at nearly $16,000, I like going to him at captain. At number 2, though, surprisingly cheaper, is Daniel Jones at $15,300. He's garnering quite a bit more ownership. I mean, he's a QB at the captain slot. People obviously love going there, but nearly a 30-point projection, and unlike Patrick Mahomes, has legit 30, even 40-point upside at the flex spot, let alone here at captain. He has rushing upside. Somebody could go out there, get you 100 yards rushing, put up 300 yards passing. One of the few guys in the NFL that's capable of doing that. I mean, Lamar Jackson, obviously another one. Potentially Trey Lance when he starts to get starts for the 49ers. But Daniel Jones, not necessarily what you think of as an athletic quarterback, but the metrics definitely pan that out. So I like him there at number 2. That rushing upside really helps him a lot. And at number 1, our favorite captain play is Tyreek Hill. And if you're not new to the channel, if you've been around for a while, pretty much anytime Tyreek Hill is on a showdown slate, he's going to be the best captain pick. This guy, instead of just 30, maybe 35-point upside in terms of a flex play, this guy is legit 40, 50-point upside. I mean, just look at weeks 1 and 2, went out for 30 points, 50 points in week 2. If he goes out and does that on a showdown slate, you're obviously going to have him at captain. He's one of the few players, maybe the only player in the NFL that has that kind of upside. I really can't think of another one. Potentially Devontae Adams if he has a nuclear game. Obviously Derrick Henry if he's running for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. But Tyreek Hill, somebody's going to get the ball a ton. In those massive games, is going to get 10 to 15 touches, potentially 200 yards and a few touchdowns as well. So you can see I'm projected for nearly 30 fantasy points. Just 0.3 points more than Travis Kelce. And he's also $600 more. So it might not seem like the best play, but their ceilings are nowhere nearly remotely the same. I mean, Travis Kelce, you're looking at like 25-point upside. Tyreek Hill, you're looking at 50, 55-point upside. So really like him there at the captain slot. That's why he comes in at number 1. All for our Monday Night Football picks, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as your favorite captain play on the slate. And let me know why as well. I always love to get some debate going down there in the comments. Also, really appreciate all of your support here on the channel for everybody that stopped by and watched. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have tons of NFL content coming out this week, main slate content. We'll have values, fades, and sleepers. Of course, our normal showdown picks. And for any golf fans out there, we're going to have plenty of golf PGA content as well. This is the Mayakoba Classic week. It's called the Worldwide Technologies Mayakoba now. They changed it a bit. Either way, this is a golf tournament I won a GPP for last year, won 25 grand. So obviously have a very good read on this track. So if you're a golf guy, make sure to go ahead and check that out as well. But until next time, good luck with all of your lineups for this Monday Night Football slate, and I'll see you guys next time.